If you have your Bibles, turn to 1 Peter chapter 1. And get there and just hold that spot. And that'll be great. By the way, I'm up here, and right now, everything sounds good, doesn't it? Sounds good? Did sound pretty good today? You betcha? You know what? It's really a funny thing because I started out and I had that echo and I could see a couple people going like that. And by the way, an echo's okay because you probably need to hear it twice. But nevertheless, it's really funny how that happens because, the hard thing about being in the sound booth is the only time anybody ever says anything is when it's not working, because you don't notice it when it's working. When it's working, you're doing other things, right? Like when it's working, you're just happy and you're just talking and everything's going well. But when it's not working, everybody's like, whew. And I just want you to know, we got some people who do a good job back there, and it's really pretty amazing. I got to tell you, in comparison, when I was a young man at Calvary Chapel of Auburn, I think Pastor Buzzard said something to the sound man every single week, wanting the sound adjusted. And I don't know whether it was the system or what, but every week the poor sound guy got picked on. Which is why we, in 2 years went through 83 sound guys. But anyway, not really. But I just really appreciate that it's sounding good right now. And once in a while, you got to, when it's, the time you wouldn't say anything is when it's working, right? So don't you appreciate we have good people helping out behind the scenes? Thank you. All right. So you're over in 1 Peter chapter 1, and I'm going to get to that in a second. How many of you have ever heard the term insurrection? Insurrection. Isn't that interesting? Insurrection. In fact, we've been hearing about insurrections around the world. We've been hearing about insurgents. And it has the idea of something rising up from within. So if there's an insurgency, there's a group of people within a country, for example, and they're rising up in rebellion, an inside uprising. The reason I mention it is because while the world has insurgents, the world also needs resurgence. And it's not really a term that I think even exists, but it does now. I'm going to be like the Apostle Paul and coin some words. Resurgent. You are people who God has called to be resurgents. An insurgent comes from within, but a resurgent rises up again. We are people who have passed from death to life. And we are again rising. We are again rising people. The word from which we get resurrection, means again, and surrection, or surge, because that's the base of where surrection comes from, that part of the word, had the idea of something that was coming like a bubbling up out of the ground. Have you ever been to one of those places where there's a water coming up and it just keeps coming? And if you're a human and you try to stop it by sticking your finger in it, it doesn't work because you can't stop it because it's unstoppable. I want you to know today that the resurrection is unstoppable. That the devil thought he had stopped what Jesus was going to do by killing him. And I think the devil even knew that Jesus would accomplish the forgiveness of sins if he died as the sacrifice. But he thought as long as he's dead, it stops there. The people may be forgiven, but they're still going to die. But you see, that's where the devil didn't understand that there was a resurgence coming, and a group of people who would be resurgents. You're not insurgents, you're resurgents. You're rising up again. You're going to be the people who keep coming and keep coming and keep coming, and nothing is going to stop you. Do you see yourself as that? Well, today I want to start putting some hope in your thinking, because I want you to sense who you are and what your inheritance is so that you can rise up and take it again. Here in 1 Peter, verse 3 of chapter 1, praise be to the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. In his great mercy, he has given us new birth into a living hope. Everybody say living hope. Through the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead, and into an inheritance that can never perish, spoil, or fade. This inheritance is kept in heaven for you, who through faith are shielded by God's power until the coming of the salvation that is already to be revealed in the last time. In all this you greatly rejoice, though now for a little while you have had to suffer grief in all kinds of trials. These have come so that the proven genuineness of your faith, of greater worth than gold, which perishes even though refined by fire, may result in praise, glory, and honor when Jesus Christ is revealed. You who have not seen him, you love him. And even though you do not see him now, you believe in him and are filled with an inexpressible and glorious joy. Everybody say inexpressible and glorious joy. I was talking about that just the other day, wasn't I? For you are receiving the end result of your faith, the salvation of your souls. A living hope. This is a present tense hope. A living, currently, present tense hope. Hope that's for now. Not just for the sweet by and by. It's for the real here and now. I am a hope carrier. I am infected with hope. Can't help it. It's on me. It's in me. It's affecting my life. Probably going to affect your life because you've been exposed to me, because it's contagious. It's not a dead hope. It's not a hope that says, I can't wait until I die so I can get what God's given to me. That's not what we're supposed to be doing. Looking forward to the day when he finally returns and takes us back. No, we're supposed to look forward to today that we might bring his will on earth as it is in heaven. That's what we're here for. This kind of thinking, by the way, of thinking about my future hope and the hope of this and the hope of that in the future as though I can't lay a hold of it in the present, is what's been keeping the church in America especially and in the world from having the effect that Jesus said we would have, because he said we would leaven the whole world like a little bit of leaven put in a lump, and we would affect the whole world. And quite honestly, for much of my Christian experience, we thought of leaven, and every time we thought of the word leaven, we thought of it as being the negative that would get inside of us and ruin us. The truth of the matter is, light overcomes the darkness. The leaven of God leavens the whole lump, and you are that leaven. You are the thing affecting the world around you and changing the planet. One moment, 1 minute, 1 hour, 1 day, one person, one job situation, one need for prayer at a time. That's you. We have come into it because we've been born into it. It's genetic. It's the DNA of the Spirit. This is a reoccurring theme, by the way, in this house. But I haven't preached on it maybe enough recently to encourage you in the hope that you carry. But you need to realize that you have it. And there are times when I don't feel it. There are times when I'm driving along in my car and I'm not sensing it. I'm not aware of it. There are moments when I've got a sniffle, or I've got a thing going on, or something preoccupying my mind. But someone will come up to me, and someone will say something to me, and all of a sudden, my DNA takes over. And I find myself, even though I haven't felt super hopeful in my own soul, I find myself speaking out of my spirit and into them, and suddenly hope is being given to them, and I get it back in me. You ever had that happen? Sometimes I need to remember that faith is the substance of things hoped for. And that faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the word. But did you know that hope comes that way too? Sometimes I need to turn off the radio because it sounds pretty hopeless sometimes. All the doom and gloom and people frustrated and disappointment and not sure what's going to happen next that the news media thrives off of. I need to think of myself as a hope dealer. I preached a message on that once. I got it someplace in the office. We can bring that back. I need to start being a hope dealer. By the way, I love this phrase. I heard this from some of the leadership that's part of our network. He who has the most hope has the most influence. Let me say that again. He who has the most hope has the most influence. I don't know what's going on where you work, where you live, where you play, where your family meets. I don't know what's going on, but can I tell you something? Do you feel like you'd like to have a little more influence on the situations around you? He who has the most hope has the most influence. This is yes. The more hope you demonstrate, the more hope you generate, the more influence you have on people around you, because the world is desperate for hope. And they'll hunt down hope dealers. They'll meet you in a dark alley or wherever just to get their fix, because they need some hope. This living hope comes through the resurrection, our passage said. Because Jesus was raised from the dead, we have come into an inheritance that can never perish, spoil, or fade. Think about that. My hope cannot be tarnished. It cannot be diminished. It cannot be taken from me. It's not just my hope. It was given to me. When I don't feel it, I need to go find it. Because it's not that it's not there, it's just not in my vision. And I need a revision at that point. I need to go find that hope that he gave me. I need to look back at what he promised, and I need to say, wait a minute, and shake myself. My hope didn't spoil. It didn't go bad. It didn't get rotten. It didn't fade away. It didn't disappear. Do you believe what this word says? This word says it won't perish, it won't spoil, it won't fade. It's going to be there because it was given to me. It wasn't a hope that I created, it was a hope that was put in me because of what he did. And when you find it, because usually it's where you left it, and you get back to it, do you realize that it is that resurrection, that bubbling up? That bubbling up. That thing you can try to put your finger in and you can't stop it from coming up. That thing you can try to build a big thing around and you can't keep it from flowing out. It's going to sneak out over here. It's going to get out over there. It is going to find its way because of the resurrection. So I might as well face the reality and just live with the fact that I'm going to be hopeful. Sorry. Not. Because it's an inheritance. Now, when do we get an inheritance? When somebody dies. Actually, you can get it before they die. Sometimes. But most of the time, inheritances come when somebody dies. Hebrews 9:15 through 17. Just let me read it. You can write it down and look at it later. For this reason, Christ is the mediator of a new covenant, and those who are called, or that those who are called may receive the promised eternal inheritance. Now that he has died as a ransom to set them free from their sins, committed under the first covenant. In the case of a will, it is necessary to prove the death of one who made it, because a will is in force only when someone has died. It never takes effect while the one who made it is living. But he has died. And we have, present tense, received our inheritance. I got to keep looking into what my inheritance is all about. I've got to keep exploring my inheritance because it's big. You realize the inheritance you've received is incredibly large. Like, it's huge. It's kept in heaven, our passage said. Kept in heaven. Well, there's the thing. It's kept in heaven. You know, when I get there, I'll be able to have it. Just because your inheritance is kept in heaven doesn't mean you have to wait till heaven to get it. In fact, Matt gave that testimony. Where are you at, Matt? Did he slip out to do something? Oh, he's back there. Yep, Matt. Matt, where do you keep your big oodles of money that the guy couldn't steal from you? It's kept in the bank. You realize that most of us have our money kept someplace. But it's not kept from us. It's kept for us. Why is it kept for us? So when we need it, we can go get it. It's kept for our use. Our inheritance is in heaven, not just so we can go to heaven. Our inheritance is in heaven like the bank, so we can bring of our inheritance from heaven to earth. Let me just give you an example, and this will help maybe clarify this a little bit. How many of you know that healing's part of our inheritance as well? Okay. So Jesus died that we could receive healing. Now, if I need healing now, it's kind of handy for me to access it now. And I think I'm going to be teaching on healing again because we haven't done it for a long time. And I think we need a booster shot of healing. In fact, I've been listening to some healing stuff because I need a booster shot in healing because faith comes by hearing. If I'm going to believe what I believe, I have to hear what I need to hear, so I'll believe what I need to believe. But think about it this way. Healing is part of our inheritance, and it's kept in heaven. So let's think of it. If healing is only for us when we get to heaven, then healing isn't much use because we don't need it in heaven. How many know there won't be anybody sick there? You betcha. It's exactly true. There's nobody going to be sick there. Why did he give us an inheritance that we have to wait to get in heaven? If healing has to be waited on until we get to heaven, it's kind of silly because we won't be sick when we get there. Then the thing he left for us would be of no value. He wants it to be for now, because now is when it has the value. This is yes. So this hope that we have, this faith that we walk in, it's for now. It won't be necessary when we're in a place where we don't need it, where everything's been achieved. We won't need it. We need it now. This passage that we started with talks about our proven faith, which is greater in worth than gold. I don't think there's too many among us, I hope there aren't any among us, who haven't, by faith, known what it is to walk into the presence of God in the here and now. Not that he's not always present, but when we start to, by faith, grab a hold of that reality that he is present, that he's here right now, that he can be felt in a present way, a manifest way. When we start to go after that experience of having that manifestation of his presence, when we start to go after wanting to see that, it's valuable. I don't know about you, but it's more valuable to me than gold. It's more valuable to me than gold. It's more valuable than gold. Yeah, it's more valuable than gold. I need to get more of the awareness of his presence working in my life. And I'm pretty aware of it. God speaks to me quite often. It's very rare that I go to a Cracker Barrel and don't have a word for the waitress. Cracker Barrel, for some reason, is my place. We're going to Cracker Barrel, aren't we? Yeah, we're gonna after today, we're gonna take off and we're gonna go south and visit family for a couple of days. At some point, we're going to Cracker Barrel because Mom and Lisa says so. My mama says we got to go buy Cracker Barrel. He wants us to value His presence. He wants us to value an awareness of what He's doing. It's part of our inheritance that we walk in that level of awareness that the world needs us to walk in because they desperately need, yeah, somebody's helping me preach. They desperately need to know and feel what we've known and felt, most of us. And the last phrase that I want to mention out of this passage, I mentioned a little bit earlier and had you repeat. Inexpressible and glorious joy. I know we just preached on rejoice. We've had all those sermons that are involved in revision that we've been preaching. This is the 10th one if you add this to the revision series, because this one is ReSurrection. That's what it really literally could be pronounced as. The R-E is again to rise up, surrection, resurrection. We've just said it so long that way that we don't realize that they're both connected. And we have this resurrection, and with this resurrection should be an inexpressible and glorious joy. This is a huge part of our inheritance. And we need to learn how to walk in this even when everything isn't going our way. Let me say that again. We need to learn to walk in this even when everything isn't going our way or the way we think it should go. Because sometimes it's not going the way we think it should go, but it's going the way He thinks it should go. But I like Him because He's Jehovah Sneaky. And He'll surprise you. By the way, I've been telling you guys about that series that Jim Baker did, and I started listening to again. And his very first message in that series, just give you an idea of how crazy this Jim Baker guy is. He's not the Jim Baker from a long time ago, for those of you who remember that back then. He's still around, I guess. But this young man in Columbus area, Powell, Ohio, he gets up to preach his first message on finances. And he doesn't preach about giving until message 13, by the way. He's got a lot to say about attitudes toward money that changes everything. Before he ever talks about giving, he wants to talk about our thinking and reset the way we think. But he gets up in his first message and he goes, hey, by the way, I just got a call. We used to live in North Carolina, and we have a rental house down there, and my renter called up, and he just told us that there's $30,000 to $50,000 worth of repairs that need to be done on the foundation. And he says, I don't have $30,000 to $50,000 to throw at a rental place. So I don't know what I'm going to do. But I know God's up to something. I know God's up to something. 5 messages in, 5 weeks at least later, and I think it was more like 8 because he wasn't preaching the series every week. Can you imagine preaching 18 messages in a row? People would be like, come on already. So, he didn't do that. But the 5th of his messages, he says, hey, we got a call from our renter. He says, I gotta share testimony with you. We got a call from our renter. Our renter said that he had somebody come out and look at it, and instead of $30,000 to $50,000, it turned out to be $2,300. And our renter paid it. And then I found out that our renter put a 3-car garage on the property. And he redid the driveway with pavers at his own expense. I need a renter like that, by the way. Do you get that? Do you see how that thing was turned around from death to life, from darkness to light? Because the guy stands up not knowing what's going to happen, thinking he's got $30,000 to $50,000 worth of debt, and 5 weeks later at least, or maybe a little longer, he finds out, I don't have $50,000 worth of debt. I got improvements on my home worth over $50,000. And I didn't pay a thing. That's the kind of God that we serve. You like that? Some of you, God can do that for me anytime he wants to. Just go ahead, God. Just Jehovah Sneaky. See, we have, as part of our inheritance, bubbling up an inexpressible and glorious joy. And today, across the nation, will probably be one of the most joyful days in the church, because we're all celebrating the resurrection. But here's the good news. The celebration of the resurrection isn't something we do just today. We do it every day, because he's rising up, because we are resurgents. We are sent out into the world to resurge and resurrect the world and bring it out of a place where it doesn't have anything to where it has everything, as God wants to give. It's the inheritance that he wants to give to everybody. So we ought to be the most joyful people on the planet. And we are, relatively speaking, I think, the most joyful people on the planet. I think of all religions, I think ours is the happiest. It's just we ought to be happier. The devil wants to make us all prune face and nasty and negative. But as we read earlier in our offering reading, God is in a good mood. You know why? Because all that sin stuff's been taken care of once and for all. Sometimes we forget about his love for us and our love for him. Sometimes we forget how good we have it. His joy should be so overwhelming that it's hard to express. There are times when people should look at us and they should say, "Why are you so happy?" Go ahead, you're allowed, by the way, to be happy. It's perfectly legal. And if somebody says to you, "Why are you so happy?" you ought to say, yeah. See, that's inexpressible joy right there. Couldn't find the words for it. I couldn't find the words for it. I'm just so happy. Yeah. Okay. Good. You should be that happy. Say, "Well, you don't know what's going on in my life." You don't know what's going on in my life. I could give you some tales of woe. Nobody knows the trouble I've seen. Nobody knows but Jesus. I can tell you the things that aren't going the way I wanted them to go. Or I can be joyful knowing that God knows and he's Jehovah Sneaky and he's about to turn my situation around. And I just need to watch and believe. So, if your hope has died, if your joy has been taken, there is a resurrection. And today I proclaim to you, take it back. Get it back. Let it rise up inside of you. Don't let it be stolen from you. Don't let the devil cheat you. Don't believe the lie that it's not there, that somehow it disappeared. Your inheritance is kept safe in the best bank in the universe. And no one can steal it from you, and no one can rob you, and it's yours. All you have to do is go get it. And as amazing as it was, that testimony about Matt's bank, they had already stopped somebody from stealing some money from him. God would never let them even begin to think about it. Because he's got control. And here's the other thing. Way better than Matt's account, the one you have in heaven, it's a bottomless thing. It's not going to run out. Maybe you came today and you have just been struggling to have hope. No condemnation. when I say this. There have been days this year where my eyes got on things, where my ears got filled with things, that my mind got flooded with things, and my heart struggled to believe what I know in my knower. It was attacking my knower. See, it goes in these gates right here, gets in here and swirls around and tries to drop into here. And all of a sudden, down here in my heart, I start to forget or lose track or lose focus, lose vision, and I need a revision. And I get it. It happens. It happens to me. I run into family members or friends or people in the church, and they're going through something. And it rises up. But sometimes I wish I had a little bit more, and it's because I haven't learned to access the more. Or maybe I've been a little afraid to go after it. And I got this dumb idea of, well, what if it's not there when I need it? Duh. It's going to be there when you need it. But sometimes you just need people to agree with you too. That's why we do this. That's why there is a body of believers, so that people can agree with you. Don't be silly now when I ask the question, but just respond accordingly. If the enemy's been trying to steal your hope and you've had trouble visioning where your hope is bubbling up, visioning where your joy is bubbling up, visioning where you're supposed to be and what's supposed to be going on, if you've been hit from the left and the right and the front and the back and everything's a little disoriented, that's okay. We're here for you. And we're here for you right now. So right now, if you've been battling to have hope, stand up and let somebody pray with you.